All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome on into the Auburn Daily Show, episode 23 of the Auburn Daily Show. Lance Dawe here with you. Thank you guys so much for stopping by to watch the live stream. Unfortunately, not live today. I mean, technically we're live, but right now I'm not live. I'm pre-recording this because a little bit of a scheduling issue. Hope you guys don't mind. So anybody out there in the chat, I will be attempting to respond to people, but it will not be live. This is a pre-recorded thing, but I will be trying to respond to questions if you guys have any in chat. But thank you guys so much for hanging out today on the 23rd episode of the Auburn Daily Show. Beautiful afternoon here in Auburn, Alabama. I got a couple interesting topics lined up for today's show. A couple Auburn basketball things we want to talk about. The statistic of the day per usual. If you're not following us already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at SI_Auburn. If you're watching on YouTube, whether this be pre or post live stream, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to us. You can also follow us on Facebook. Just search up Auburn Daily. You can go ahead and like the page. That would be great. The topic I want to start off with today is something that if you are an avid reader of auburndaily.com, you've noticed we've put up recently an article titled, and I don't want to get this wrong, so let me quote it specifically, "Don't count on Auburn football to land a transfer portal wide receiver." And Zach Blackerby, host of the Locked on Auburn podcast, we'll put up an article kind of breaking down what he talked about on his episode of the day and just kind of explaining, what the topics were, what the guests were, just kind of all that different stuff. In the article, Zach explains, why he doesn't think Auburn's going to be able to pick up a wide receiver at this point in the cycle. And then he says, we talk about it a little bit more with Mike G of the War Report on today's episode of Locked on Auburn. I would encourage anybody out there who doesn't already listen to the Locked on Auburn podcast to go and do so. They're on YouTube as well. Probably going to have Zach here on the show later on this week. But I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction. And I know that I've probably said on this show before, Auburn probably doesn't have the best chance to go out there and get a wide receiver commit, considering the situation right now with the program. And also, once guys hit the portal that are at least somewhat highly touted, there's going to be a lot of different teams in pursuit of that individual portal player. And so it's just, it's difficult for Auburn to consistently come out on top. But there is one particular kid that has entered the transfer portal recently, I believe last Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And it's somebody that Auburn has scheduled to visit. Now, whether or not he commits to somewhere else is up in the air. But right now, Auburn's got their eyes on a kid named Ricky Pearsall. He's a transfer wide receiver out of Arizona State. He is technically a junior this season, and he's taking an official visit to Florida, and then he is taking an official visit to Auburn. Now, according to the articles that I've read, he has not set a date for that specific commitment. We'll just have to see. But Auburn has interest in a transfer portal wide receiver. And I genuinely believe if Florida and maybe a couple of other schools coming out of the woodwork to see if they can get this kid, I think Auburn's got a legitimate shot at him. Because you can make the case for Florida, right? Like before we get into some of Pearsall's numbers and what he does, let's just talk about the school that Auburn is directly in competition with right now that we know about, Florida. So right now, their receiver room doesn't necessarily have a lot of pieces in it, right? They've got some guys, some four-star guys. We actually talked about that recently when talking about Gus Malzahn and his four-star wide receivers. But anyway, they don't have a lot of depth and they don't have a lot of experience in that receiver room. And so a consistent question that has been asked throughout the spring is, who's Florida's quarterback's going to be throwing to? Whether that be Anthony Richardson, whether that be Jack Miller, whether that be, I don't know. I don't keep track of Florida's depth chart at quarterback. But point being, like, you can make the pitch if you're Florida and Billy Napier to say to a wide receiver like Pearsall, it's like, hey, you not only could come into this program and start day one, but you could be a reliable target especially early on in the season, kind of have that opportunity to submit yourself as one of our guys to one of these young and experienced quarterbacks. You have the opportunity to do that. At a place like Florida, I'd say that's a pretty sweet deal. But here's the thing. I don't think Florida offers anything that Auburn doesn't. And on top of that, and this is a little bit of a bias here, if I'm looking at Ricky Pearsall and we're trying to get him onto a little bit of a bigger stage, maybe develop him a little bit more, look, I've got my money invested in Ike Hilliard right now, Auburn's wide receivers coach. I think that he is going to do a phenomenal job. I've got very high expectations for him. I don't have necessarily high expectations for the core this season, but I've got high expectations of him to be able to develop guys and put them in positions to succeed and potentially get to the NFL. We've talked about that recently on the show. But Ricky Pearsall, I feel like the sell to him is similar to the sell from Florida. It's like, look, we've got a lot of young and experienced guys in our room. We don't know who our quarterback's going to be, just like Florida, right? So I think the pitch is like, if we've got a better staff, we're going to put you in a better position to potentially get some more passes. And also, all things considered, how much is Florida going to be throwing the ball this season anyway? We're going to give you more touches. We're going to give you more opportunities. Now, it's going to be a competition. It's going to be a dogfight. But if you put in the work, you're going to get rewarded. And we feel like in this system, you're going to be able to benefit from it a little bit more. At least that's partially the bias showing here for me. But at the same time, I feel like that's a legitimate sell. I feel like that's a legitimate sell to Pearsall. So to look at some of his numbers and kind of break down what I've seen from him on film, last season at Arizona State, best season of his career, 48 catches, 580 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. That was last season. It goes for 12.1 yards per catch. And the biggest game of his career was against UCLA, number 20 UCLA. It was a blowout win for Arizona State last season. Had 132 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns versus the Bruins. And then also something I feel like we need to note here, they used him a little bit in the ground game, Arizona State did, just across the entire season. He had 6 rushing attempts for 44 yards and a touchdown. Of course, that only touchdown of the entire season. I believe it came against Southern Utah in the opener. Yeah, Southern Utah in the opener. So I don't necessarily know if he would be somebody Auburn would want to utilize on jet sweeps, but I'll tell you this, he's got a little bit of speed. I liked what I saw from him in the speed department. I think that could be useful. He's got solid hands, 6'1", 200-pound receiver. He's got that experience. He's a junior. Now, do I think he would be somebody that would come to Auburn and break out for like 800 yards? I don't think so. But what this unit is looking for right now is experience. They're looking for somebody out there outside of Shedrick Jackson that has a little bit of that experience at a Power 5 level. And you could get it at the G5 level, right? Like you could have gotten Corey Rucker from Arkansas State, and you would have been very pleased with that. But my point being here is, if you're looking for a depth piece, a potential starter that is just a veteran presence that will just make this transition for this new quarterback more comfortable, just another option out there, I think that Pearsall would be a great get. I think he would be a really good get. Of course, the question is, can Auburn close? That's the question you have to ask, is can the Tigers close on somebody right like Ricky Pearsall? Question just remains to be seen. I don't know. I really hope that Auburn, before the offseason finishes, I hope that they find a way to get a transfer portal wide receiver. Like I would be upset, but I wouldn't be like mad. I wouldn't be crying about it. Like I would be displeased if Auburn came out of this offseason without a couple of somewhat relevant additions in the transfer portal. And I believe they will. I do believe that they will. So that's what I had on Auburn potentially picking up a transfer portal wide receiver and Ricky Pearsall. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about today is Alan Flanigan and Dylan Cardwell. So they have officially announced that they will be declaring for the NBA draft, maintaining their eligibility. And again, for anybody watching out there, again, it's not live, but I will be responding in the comments. So if you have any thoughts on what I'm about to say, just let me know. But this is the third and fourth player for the Tigers to enter into the NBA draft this season. But again, the thing is that Flanigan and Cardwell are maintaining their eligibility. And I believe the intention is to return. I don't see, quite frankly, either of these guys getting drafted. I think a lot of people would agree with that. And so you have to look at the way that they're utilizing this is like, well, essentially it's to get some feedback and to come back to Auburn and improve on different things that they have been criticized about during the draft process. And well, let's look at both of them. Let's start with Dylan Cardwell. Dylan Cardwell, I think, is an underappreciated piece of Auburn's team. So last season, he was shadowed by Walker Kessler, or excuse me, he was in the shadow of Walker Kessler. And a lot of people criticized his defense and his positioning. And that's really what a lot of people remember him for. And that he just didn't really have any sort of like consistent back to the basket game. He was really just only there to catch lobs and block shots. And I think that's valid. I agree with you. I think that he does need to work on his defensive positioning a little bit. And he also needs to work on creating an offensive game outside of being the dunker. Whenever I say dunker, I don't mean like somebody just dunks the basketball. There's literally a spot, for those of you that don't know, there's a spot in basketball called the dunker, the four. We'll sit on the block, we'll catch lobs and different things like that. But I think that Cardwell is underappreciated. If you take a look at some of his statistics, he was still averaging like a block and a half per game, behind Walker Kessler, mind you. So while everybody wants to make a big deal out of the fact that Jabari Smith was good defensively, Walker Kessler was the DPOY this year, Dylan Cardwell, coming off the bench, was a pretty solid role player, all things considered, shooting almost 70% from the floor. If you look at him per 40 minutes, would have averaged 4.3 blocks for the Tigers. That's good. So while Cardwell still struggles in certain areas, I mean, offensively, still relatively efficient. You'd like to be able to see him develop a little bit more. But like defensively, I think you got to take what you can get, work on that positioning. But I don't think he's as some people are that I've seen on social media and I've talked to in person are down on Dylan Cardwell. I'm optimistic. I think Auburn can continue to develop him. And the fact that he's not really had the opportunity to play in some type of starting role, and quite frankly, he won't now that Johan Traore is here, I think that we just give it a little bit more time. I think we give it a little bit more time. I think that's fair. But then you look at Alan Flanigan. Now that we've moved on from Cardwell, you look at Alan Flanigan, and personally, I'm not the biggest Alan Flanigan fan. I think that he's a really good kid. I think he's insanely athletic. But I was not a massive fan of his play style, even in 2020 when he was averaging 14 points a game. And I was not. You really had to tamper your expectations for him this season because of the Achilles injury and trying to recover from that. And that's a very difficult process. But even after he was healthy, he kind of reverted back to his freshman form a little bit. And in some areas, he got worse than what he was doing his freshman season. And I really do hope that he's able to shake out of it. I really do hope that he's able to work on some of these things. And I think the most important thing for him is working on his ball handling skills. He has to be able to handle the ball a little bit better than he does if he's going to be involved in so many possessions for the Tigers this season. He's got to be able to get that under control. The joke on social media was every single time Alan Flanigan touches the ball, you expect there to be a turnover or you expect there to be a problem. He could not handle the basketball. And it's reflective, and it reflected in his statistics. He was averaging over 3 turnovers in 2020. He was averaging, I believe, over 2 this past season. I can pull that up for you guys real quick. I know this isn't live, but just roll with me here. But Alan Flanigan really struggled with his decision-making and his turnovers. So he averaged 3.3 turnovers per game in 2020, the 2020-2021 season. And then this past year averaged 2.1 turnovers per game. And he was getting 24 and a half minutes a game. But that's crazy. That's crazy. So per 40 minutes, he was averaging 3.5 turnovers by himself. And then you couple that with the fact that his shooting percentages went back down. He was shooting 20% from 3, 48% from 2. So that means he was shooting 39.5% overall from the floor. not the most efficient, not the best decision maker, not the best ball handler. There's a lot I think Alan Flanigan needs to work on. But let me tell you something. The base is there. The athleticism, the size, it's there. We've seen the potential with Alan Flanigan. It's just, can he put it all together now that he has officially moved past that Achilles injury? Can he put it all together and have one more good year with the Tigers? I hope he's able to do so. I want him to do so. But right now, I'm not sold on him as an NBA player. And I really do hope this evaluation process is beneficial for him. I hope that he's able to succeed. I want him to. All right. We've got one more thing I want to talk about here, the stat of the day. But before we do that, guys, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at aushirts.com. AU Shirts is the place to go if you want to flex your Auburn fandom. Absolutely great designs over there. Got some player designs as well. For every major sport here on the Plains, aushirts.com has a design for it. Josh Hall was repping the Thick King shirt the other day at a baseball game. Sonny DeShera design. Let's see. Blake Burkhalter has a new design. Closing time with a backwards K as the C in closing. That's absolutely fantastic. They've got all these different designs from Everything School, the Cruton Finger, Portal Season, other official player designs will be coming soon as well. I'm sure they're going to have a ton this fall for the football team. Lots of great stuff over there. They've also got stickers. They've got Auburn Daily merch now if you guys want to go check that out. And we've got a special deal here for you Auburn Daily viewers. 10% off your order if you go over to aushirts.com and use promo code DAILY at checkout. Again, that's aushirts.com using promo code DAILY for 10% off your purchase at checkout. Would highly encourage you guys to go check out our friends over at aushirts.com. All right, the final thing here that I wanted to talk about, Auburn in the NFL. And I think that this is an interesting piece. Zach Blackerby put this up over at auburndaily.com. You can go check it out over there. Will Auburn have more players drafted under Brian Harsin? That's the question of this article. And this is what Zach says. Every college football program wants its team to be filled with players that will eventually be successful in the NFL. No doubt. We want that talent on roster. We want it developed, and we want it put out into the pros. It's always telling to see how some special college teams were from the season prior when the NFL teams pick several players from that school. You can look at 2019 LSU as a prime example. We're probably going to see 500,000 Georgia Bulldogs pulled off the draft board this upcoming draft. Actually tomorrow, which is insane to think about. And Auburn is expected to get 3 Tigers drafted in the 2022 NFL draft. So that's Roger McCreary, Smoke Monday, Zacoby McClain. Personally, I think 2 might be 1. I know that people may get upset at that. That's just the reality of the situation, in my opinion. But here's the statistic of the day, and I'd love for all 3 of them to get drafted. I'd love for 4 to somehow get drafted. D-Rob, you want to get drafted? Go ahead, roll tide. That's a joke. But here's the stat of the day. Auburn football had 12 players drafted in the first 3 years of the Gus Malzahn era, including 4 in the first year. Of course, they weren't his recruits. Actually, kind of technically, some of them might have been, considering he was the OC in 2010. But anyway, I digress. In 2014, Malzahn had 2 first-rounders. Greg Robinson was 2nd overall to the Rams. D. Ford was 23rd overall to the Chiefs. Trey Mason was a 3rd-round pick that year, and Jay Prosh was a 6th-rounder. Steal the 6th round, IMO. What it means here is your first offseason success in the NFL draft is a little bit of luck with whatever you inherit and how it works with your scheme. It's no secret that Auburn caught lightning in a bottle during Malzahn's first season as head coach on the Plains in 2013. However, Brian Harsin did not catch lightning in a bottle. He will, however, have 3 guys taken in this weekend's NFL draft with the possibility of a 4th if teams like what they see from Demetrius Robertson, T.D. Moultrie, Tony Fair, or Brodarius Ham. I think T.D. Moultrie or Fair, honestly, could make it. Next year, Auburn should see a lot more Tigers get selected by NFL teams. Tank Bigsby, Colby Wooden, Eka Leota, Derek Hall, Keandre Jones, Owen Papo. Also, I just want to point out here real quick, Colby Wooden, Eka Leota, Derek Hall, all legitimate NFL prospects next season. Keep talking about the defensive line. It's gonna be great. It's going to be great. I'm expecting big things about the D-line this season. But all those guys could be NFL selections with several more players to play into the 7 rounds after next season. So that's what Zach Blackerby had to say over at auburndaily.com, excuse me. And I agree with him. I think that fans may get distraught, some of them, and some of them may just get upset over like, oh, well, we're not really putting out guys in the NFL. And, this is something that Harsin did during his time at Boise with even worse recruits. Like, what is going on here? It's just a weird situation. It will come. It will come. I believe in Harsin as a developer of talent. I believe in that. I think we got to see that last season. A lot of different areas, even quarterback. Say what you want about TJ Finley. That was a weird situation. Not everybody succeeds when they have to throw their backup quarterback in after he didn't get an entire spring. He didn't actually get a spring at all working into the scheme. But I think that Harsin will be able to put some Tigers in the NFL here in the upcoming years. And so I think the question is, does he get over 12? Is he under 12? I think there's a chance that he's under 12, considering what happened during his first season on the Plains. Of course, I will say, everybody wants to talk about it was a bad year. Keep saying it on the show. Injuries, they go a little bit differently. I think that you get close to 8, maybe even 9 wins last year, and nobody's saying a word, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, stat of the day, I think, is interesting to see what Gus Malzahn was doing during his first 3 years with the Tigers. And I'm just curious to see what Brian Harsin does in terms of getting talent into the NFL. I believe he's going to do so. And I'm interested to see who the guys are. Interested to see what positions get drafted most consistently. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Auburn Daily Show. You can follow us on Twitter at SI_Auburn. You can also follow us on Facebook. Just search up Auburn Daily. We live stream every single weekday starting at 4 p.m. Central Time on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch. Be sure to subscribe or follow us at all of those individual platforms and continue to check us out over at auburndaily.com. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of the Auburn Daily Show. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and God bless.